All
Yeah,
right.
so I'll let Devin and Trooper Lutz introduce themselves as well.
Sure. My name is Devin Kobuz. I'm the Trimble Forensics Portfolio Manager. I've been working with Trimble Forensics for almost 5 years now. I manage the roadmap, the long range look ahead of all our solutions that we offer within Trimble Forensics. And Trooper Lutz.
Hey everybody, my name is Chris Lutz. Work for the Nebraska State Patrol full-time as a crash reconstructionist. Been doing that for about 7 years with the agency, as well as I am ACTAR accredited with my number 3089. I was a DRE number 19002 for about 6 years before I became inactive. I believe that was a year ago that I finally went inactive on that. And you may have seen me around here and there in regards to training videos and things of that sort, but my full-time job is as a sworn law enforcement officer in the state of Nebraska.
Awesome, thanks. So we'll move on to kind of the introduction of what an SX series instrument does. So this is a news clip from Kentucky out in Bluegrass, Kentucky. This is an actual news story where the SX10 and SX series instruments were showcased. So I want you to notice a couple things. Check out the weather, check out what some of the officers are doing and what that instrument's actually doing. So you notice a couple things there. Actually, in the thumbnail there, you can see an officer nailing something down into the ground. What is that for some of our newer customers? We'll explain that. And also the instrument was moving around, and we had some of those officers moving around with different pieces of equipment. So we'll get into some of what those were. So what can you actually use the SX series instruments for? So one of the main applications, what you just saw, is crash reconstruction. With the SX series instruments, it's both a total station and a scanner, so you can use the total station functionality to mark out your lane lines, mark out different features, say guardrails, mark final arrest of vehicles with that total station feature. But it's also a high quality scanner, so you can use that scan functionality to scan crush profiles. You can use that to scan important pieces of evidence such as vehicles, gash marks in the road, other points of evidence that you may need to collect. You can do all that data collection with that one instrument. You can also use it for crime scene reconstruction. So again, with that total station functionality, being able to mark key points of evidence, taking pictures with that SX12. Well, you can also scan those pieces of evidence as well, just like in the crash reconstruction purposes. And then another application that some of you may not be so familiar with is safety planning. So being able to set that SX12 up at a podium for a high-profile speaker event, setting that SX12 up at the podium and being able to range out different buildings, range out different rooftops to see, potential threats, potential spots for bad things to happen, and then also being able to create some sort of exit plan and emergency plan should something come up. You can do that all with the SX12. Now, I mentioned that the SX12 is a very high accuracy total station. How accurate is it? Well, so we rate total stations in angular accuracy. For the SX12, it is a 1 second angular accuracy. What does that mean? Well, it means that about 100 feet away from that SX12, the measurement that it takes is accurate up to 1/1000th of a foot. And to break that down even smaller, that's 0.012 inches. So at that 100-foot range from your SX12, you're getting a very, very accurate measurement every time you take a measurement with that instrument. It also has an extremely long range out to 800 meters using the reflectorless mode. What that means is that without the prism, being able to just take a measurement on any object, any surface, you can do that out to 800 meters. And just a reminder, that's 800 meters in both directions. So you can set up that SX12 in the middle of your scene, and if you've got 800 meters on either side, you're covered from that one position. Now, if you start using a prism, that range significantly increases to 5.5 kilometers. What that really means is if you can see something with your SX12, you can take a measurement. You can really set up that SX12, say if you've got high ground on your scene or near your scene, you can set up that SX12 on that high ground and then continue to take measurements and collect data from that high point on your scene. And the only time you'll actually need to move the instrument is when you physically can't see something that you're trying to collect. Otherwise, other instruments you're going to have to move a couple times just because that range isn't quite there. It's also a high quality scanner, as I mentioned before. So just like the total station functionality, the scanner has an impressive range out to 600 meters, so not quite that 800 meter range. But again, that 600 meter range is in both directions. So you've got, just over a kilometer of range for that scanner in both directions there. So again, if you can see something on your scene, you can also scan it as well as take measurements with that total station functionality. We also have something that's unique to the SX series called area scans. So traditionally, scanners, when you set them up, will do a full 360-degree scan. Now, in some cases, that's useful, but for, say, crash reconstruction, think about all the time that's wasted scanning up at the sky. It's not collecting any data there, but it is wasting time just scanning up above your head. With the SX12, you can actually select points on your screen where you want to scan. So you can actually draw a box around this vehicle that you see here on screen. And then you can set your scan settings, so coarse, medium, or fine, as well as your picture quality, coarse, medium, and fine. And you can really slim down those scan times down to sub-minute, 2-minute scans for very, very good and high quality scans. Now, what that's also affording you is smaller data sizes. So again, think about that full 360 scan. Think about how much other context is in that scan that you don't necessarily care about. Maybe the other 260 degrees around you that you don't care about. Well, it's with that area scan, you're also cutting out all that data, so you're really shrinking down that file size. So being able to work with the data, share the data, and actually store the data is much more simple with the SX12 and much easier, much less taxing on those drives. The SX12 is also able to track prisms. So you can see there on the bottom left there, that small box is actually a prism. How we do this is we take 2 pictures constantly, one with the prism tracking set on and one with the prism tracking set off. We then find the difference of those two to figure out where that prism is. And we're constantly doing this in the background so that the prism and the SX12 are constantly in contact with each other so that they can actually track the prism, track your location. Should you ever lose lock to that prism, we have in Capture this on-screen functionality and on-screen display to let you know when you are or are not connected to a prism. On the left there, you can see the green crosshair means you're good to go. Everything's connected, everything's working as it should be. And on the right there, when you're not connected to a prism, that crosshair becomes red and says, hold up, I'm not connected to a prism anymore. Let's either find the prism using the camera functionality. So the SX12, you can actually move around using the tablet and using the on-screen navigation with the camera. Or we also have quick search functions for a prism. If it's just off of your prism and you just want to find it real quick, you can hit the quick search functionality and it'll snap onto that prism rather quickly. Now, why this is important is, say you're on scene and you have a fire truck roll up right in front of your total station between you and the total station, and you lose lock. Well, with the SX12, you can actually move out from behind that fire truck, and using the tablet or using the cameras, you can point your SX12 remotely back onto that prism and then continue your data collection instead of having to walk back over to your instrument, point the instrument at a position where you can actually see yourself and then walk back and continue your collection. This is all done from wherever you're standing, so you can do this all remotely and wirelessly. Now, the great advantage of the SX12 is that it does all of this in one instrument. Traditionally, you would need to set up a scanner to collect all that scan data. And you'd also have to set up a total station to collect those survey measurements. This is all done with one instrument. So one instrument, one file is your output, and it all can be done with one person. Instead of having to have multiple people running multiple different instruments, it can all be done with one person, one setup, a truly one-man crew. We also have baked in workflows in Capture to make this data collection very, very simple, but also very, very accurate and actually survey grade. We have survey workflows built in to that SX12 in Capture that should you follow it when you're moving your total station, those scans that you collect on scene will actually come in essentially registered, meaning that there's no additional time having to register your scans as long as you follow those really specific survey workflows that we built in to Capture. So, main takeaway from this is this is all done with one person. This is all done with one solution, one system, one piece of software, one piece of hardware, and one person can really get your entire scene collected, all that data collected. Now, some changes that we made for the SX12. We actually made a significant improvement to the camera system. So there's 4 actual cameras on board the SX12. First one is the overview camera. This is exactly as the name entails. It's going to give you an overview of what the SX12 can see. Essentially, if you were standing in that position, what you could see, the SX12 can also see. It's also a second camera called the primary camera. This is going to help with your scene navigation, being able to start to zoom in on some things, maybe get a larger picture of, say, an entire vehicle. There's a third camera called the telecamera. This is what's going to really help you with those zoomed in pictures. So either something that you really need to zoom in on or something very far away, you can use that telecamera to really get a good picture of what you're trying to look at. And then that fourth camera is the plummet camera. And that's what's going to help you set up over known locations, set up over survey PK nails that you saw Kentucky putting into the ground. It's really going to help you with that process. We actually show you that camera when you're setting up the SX12, and you can actually set up right over one of those nails. Now, the great thing about this whole thing is that this is all done based off of zoom level. So there's no need to manually go into the software and switch your camera from the primary camera to the telecamera. Everything's done on the fly automatically, so that when you zoom in, it swaps to that primary camera. It swaps to that telecamera, so that you don't have to touch anything on the front end. We also made a significant improvement on the actual camera themselves. So in the SX10, we had this 5 megapixel camera. We upgraded that to a 8.1 megapixel camera. So this image that I'm showing you right now is an image taken with the SX10. A couple things I want you to look at. First is that yellow sign on the side of the structure, and then also look at the background. Look at some of the noise that's in the background, but also look at the color in the background. And then a picture taken with the SX12. So you can see that yellow sign. You can actually, it's really distinguished on the side of that structure. The greens in the foliage are so much brighter, so much more photorealistic. Now, what this is going to translate to is more accurately colorized point clouds. We use all the pictures that are taken with the SX12 to colorize our point clouds. So being able to have a better resolution picture is going to, in turn, create a much more color accurate point cloud in the end. And then again, side by side, the SX10 on the left and the SX12 on the right. And I think this picture kind of speaks for itself. What we tried to do is make these pictures really usable for you guys, being able to take pictures with the SX12 and actually use them in your reports instead of having to do double duty, taking a picture with an SX12 and then replacing it down the line with a DSLR quality. you can actually use these pictures for your reports instead of having to do all your work twice. And again, here I want you to look at the bottom area of your screen where that pavement and that grass starts to overlap. You can really see on the left how that's over contrast, or excuse me, overexposed, and that line isn't super clear. But on the right, there's a very clear edge of pavement and the start of that Bermuda grass that starting to grow over. And then one other thing I want you to look at is way out in the distance, there's this yellow dot. And we actually zoom in on that using, again, the SX10, the SX12. Look at how much more color accurate that SX12 image is. How much more you can make out that tripod and that prism on the right versus on the left. And then when we really zoom in again, just showcasing that upgrade in resolution is not just one of those cameras. It's actually all three of those cameras that we upgraded. The entire camera system, no matter which zoom level you're at, is going to have a much better quality image. So showing you a little bit about the SX series, about the SX12. How do I run it? How do I work with that data? So the main field software that we use is called Trimble Forensics Capture. So this is a quick screenshot. A couple things I want you to look at. So the green line that's running right through the middle of the software, that's actually what the total station is pointed at. In Capture, we like to update everything in real time and give you a realistic view of where you are in your scene. So that blue dot is where you currently are in your scene, and that will update as you move around in real time. Now, what this is going to afford you is when you're actually stood on top of something that you've collected, any piece of data, any piece of evidence that you've already collected, you'll be able to know that. So you won't have to walk over to something and say, I can't remember, did I mark that? Did I document that? I'll just double check. And you can really quickly look at the tablet and say, yep, I've got a point there. You can click on the point and see if you've got pictures or a description on it. You can do all this on the fly in real time while you're still on your scene, so that when you actually leave your scene, you're confident that you've got everything that you need. Now, once you actually leave that scene, we're going to take all that data and put it into Trimble Forensics Reveal. This is an extremely powerful analysis tool. Not only can you bring in that SX12 data, but you can also bring in other scan data. You can bring in other GNSS data, other total station measurement data, but also UAV data. So we actually natively bring in all these different types of data so that you don't have to go through 4 different pieces of software to come out with a deliverable. You can bring it all into Reveal and actually come out with something usable, come out with a full analysis so that you're ready to present that to your prosecutor or present that in court. And speaking of, once you actually are finished with that analysis, we have Trimble Forensics Showcase. Now this is a add-on software, or excuse me, this comes with Reveal, so that when you've done your analysis, you can export that analysis out. You can export different views out. You can export your point cloud views out to Trimble Forensics Showcase. This is what you can actually bring into court or bring to your prosecutor, so that you can go through the evidence, go through the case, and make adjustments if necessary. You can actually present this in a PowerPoint-like style, but also being able to present your point cloud evidence and being able to present everything that you've done in Reveal, but in a very interactive way and very lightweight way. So from here, I'll pass it over to Devin and Trooper Chris to let them go ahead.
All right, thanks, Brendan. I just want to take this opportunity to thank Trooper Chris Lutz again for making time to join us here this morning. If you don't recognize his name, once he starts talking, I'm sure you're going to recognize his voice. He is his 24/7 job is a sworn law enforcement officer with State Patrol in Nebraska, but somehow he does find the time to do some work with us here at Trimble Forensics. He's done Tech Tip Tuesdays. He is a certified trainer for us, and our relationship with Trooper Lutz really began after they had purchased their SX series solution. He became proficient very quickly. We recognized that he was, he had a lot of skills outside of what he's doing for the state of Nebraska, and we use them at every opportunity he allows us to. So with that, I think we'll get started with our little question and answer period here. I get to put him on the hot seat, and honestly, Chris, I'm pretty sure I won't make it as bad as being on the stand here. This image is pretty interesting. You've got to give me a little backstory on this one.
All right, so the backstory on this one is that we were called to a crime scene, and it was not at all what we were told it was going to be. In the end, we ended up having to map around and inside of a house that was extremely cluttered, and it was after a SWAT team deployment where there had been over 90 canisters of CS gas launched into the house for a barricaded subject. And that's the reason for the mask. But even with the mask on, skin was burning even outside of the house. The skin was burning as we would walk through the house, setting the instrument up, moving it through room by room, up in stairways, up into the attic. As we would walk along on the floor, the CS would just dust up off of the floor, off of the carpet, everything we touched. It was a very uncomfortable experience, to say the least. So we used our SX10 at that time to map that scene, and we had to get creative in the way that we moved it around and things of that sort. But it did require some serious decontamination when we got done with the scene.
All right, thanks. So I understand you decontaminated it by literally hosing it down with a garden hose, let it dry off, and then it was back up and working, no issues, nothing.
Correct. When we so it was a bit short-sighted on our part. We just took the instrument back and put it back in the cabinet where we normally stored it. Well, that generated some complaints in the office about people being uncomfortable when they walk by the cabinet. So we had to figure out how to decontaminate this thing, and the best solution in our sleep-deprived state was to take it out with a garden hose and spray it down. And that, right, wrong, or indifferent, that was our solution. And we were certain the instrument was weather tight, was rugged. We've tested it in the rain. It's been out in the snow, ice. So we hosed it down, let it sit out for about 24 hours, and put it back in the case. And to this day, it still functions perfectly.
Awesome. So that being said, how many cases a year do you typically handle?
So I handle about 12 to 15 cases a year that require mapping. And I mean, that ranges everything from a one-car rollover to serious injuries to a multiple fatal crash, to homicide scenes, crime scenes, things of that sort. And that's in addition to my regular duties. And we have a lot of other guys here that they also work that way, that they are handling about the same caseload in addition to other things that take up their primary time.
So given that this isn't their primary role with the State Patrol, is the solution as a whole easy to pick up and use if you haven't been using it on a daily basis? Is it easy to get yourself back up and running?
It certainly seems to be. I'm being a trainer, I dig into it a little bit more than a lot of people do. However, we do have some guys that go, months between their call out, and we don't seem to have any problems with them picking it up and going out with it. And that's been a big chunk of that has been due to the capture software being built for cops rather than surveyors, or using a survey software to shoehorn it into a law enforcement application.
Awesome. Next, Brendan. So how many of these cases, or how often are you deploying the SX series style of solution on your scenes?
Well, so far, our SXs are our workhorses, so they go out to everything. They are go-to, and it doesn't matter what call comes in, the SX goes out with us. And the excuse me, like I said, they've been our workhorses. We replaced an aging fleet of robotic and optical total stations from other manufacturers, and we just needed a solution that was going to get us one size fits all. and our SX series has been that. We've run the living daylights out of them, and they just work on every case every time. We've been very happy with them.
Nice. Next. So I guess setting the stage a little bit for everyone else that's listening in, before you decided on going to an SX solution, what were your workflows before? What were you coming from, let's say?
So we were coming from a mixture of robotic and mechanical total stations from another manufacturer. And really what it was is it was a survey instrument with survey control software being used by law enforcement for forensic use. And while we do require the same amount of accuracy and precision as a surveyor, cops aren't surveyors and surveyors aren't cops. And so we were using that hardware and software. While it worked, it wasn't intuitive to us. And that's excuse me, we're using a lot of the same techniques. You find a good place to set up your instrument, you set your backside as your longest shot, you walk your scene. All of the same things apply. We're still using the same techniques, but now we're using them with an instrument and software that have really been geared towards us and the job that we do.
So on this that I see here, you got two dramatic different times a year that you're using the solution. So on the right with the snow, I imagine it was a fairly balmy day in Nebraska. The wind was calm and such like that. So were there any issues, like their work just like a nice summer day there? Any issues with the wind? How was the scanning on the snow? Anything you can tell about that setup there?
Well, about the only issue we ran into is that we didn't want to be out in it. That was kind of the issue that we ran into, is us as humans didn't want to be out in the cold and snow and ice. It was horribly windy that day and just brutal cold. The nice thing about it was that we were able to set the instrument up on the shoulder of the road or down into the grass, and we were able to sit back in our warm cars with our tablet controller, and we were able to take reflectorless shots on the pavement to get a lot of our evidence from inside of the car, where we could warm up and unthaw our fingers a little bit. Also on the left side being that summer, this one was late summer, early fall, a really nice day, and really the performance of the instrument and the capabilities it brought with us on that scene, the instrument didn't know any different. It just performed in both extremes.
So given that image on the left, with all the higher vegetation, like a lot of scrub brush there, not really scanning friendly, right? So were you combining, scans and say rod shots, using it as a total station?
Yeah, so I do have some experience with the just pure terrestrial laser scanners, and taking a laser scanner into this environment, and we did have a fairly strong breeze that day. Taking a terrestrial laser scanner into this environment and expecting it to register either on scene, such as the case with the X7, or back at the office, that's a challenge, to say the least. And that is where the SX really showed through, is we were able to use survey techniques and position the instrument around the scene without having to worry about matching up cloud to cloud. We used a survey workflow, but added laser scan data into it without any additional effort. And everything came in one piece. Everything was registered and locked together using survey data. We didn't have to spend time doing cumbersome cloud-to-cloud registration through moving vegetation. It really paid off well in that scene.
Awesome. Next. So I guess a little bit of a lead on or follow on from that is, obviously your workflows have changed from what you were doing before. How has that change happened, and how has it been incorporated at the State Patrol? Has it been an easy transition? Has it been difficult? A little bit on that.
So I touched on it earlier, where we were using a lot of the same field techniques. Our field techniques didn't really change much. It's still the survey workflow that's tested, that's court proven to be forensically sound. However, I touched on earlier too with the surveyor software, and the cops aren't surveyors and surveyors aren't cops. And us as cops, we still need to be doing the same things, but it's not intuitive to us. We didn't go to school to survey property corners. That's not what we were trained for. So having a piece of software that was geared more towards us allowed us to transition away from having a 20-some page cheat sheet or a 20-some page push this button, push that button, push this button, push that button at scene, where you're having to read through this giant checklist all the time to get through your scenes, versus now it's intuitive to us. We can just pick it up and go without staring down at a piece of or a booklet trying to figure out how to get our scene mapped. And that's been the biggest change, is we don't have to rely on that booklet of instructions anymore.
And I see here that we've got one of our geospatial, forensics distribution partners highlighted front and center, Siler, and having a Trimble distribution partner local to you, has that been an advantage and a benefit to you?
Absolutely. So I'm going to brag on our partner just a little bit. Our rep takes very good care of us. Anytime there's a problem, they're on top of it, and they make our problem their problem, which is a very nice change of pace. It allows us to be more confident in where we're going and be confident in the equipment, because we can't always have everything work right all the time, right? Murphy always manages to show up, and having somebody local to us in our area that knows us, he knows our names, he knows what we like to do and don't like to do, he knows how we operate, and having somebody plugged in like that to us is absolutely invaluable.
Awesome. I want to give a shout out to Siler. Good work. Like to hear those glowing reviews from our customers. So next, please. So looking at the solution as a whole, and how it has changed what you do as a team, and the members of the team that is doing this as a secondary job, essentially, or responsibility. What has an SX series solution afforded your team that wasn't possible beforehand?
What it really gives us is options, and that's really the crux of the matter, is it gives us options, because some scenes are better for laser scanning. Other scenes, like this scene that we had along this old abandoned railway line and rugged, overgrown terrain, is better suited for a total station. Well, then you're creating around two pieces of equipment, right? You have to be trained up and be an expert on both of them. And that is also coupled with training time and competency with the instrument, and then also with that comes speed. How do we get through it quickly and move on to the next case? So with our SX, it's both in one, and that gives us the ability. It doesn't matter what we're going out to, it's going to work, whether it's indoor crime scene, whether it's an outdoor body recovery, whether it's a crash scene on a snowy roadway, whether it's a big monstrous scene with evidence spread out over miles. The same instrument does it all. And that's really what it's been able to give us, is options. And that way we don't have to crate around a couple different pieces of equipment to have that same option.
Yeah, and just for the benefit that maybe people that are listening in that aren't aware, we do have online training courses. You can get a certificate of completion on that. We have Tech Tip Tuesdays, where you will see and hear Trooper Lutz talking. He has the starring role on our Tech Tip Tuesdays. We have workshop Wednesdays that are put on by Keegan and Bryce from our team here at Trimble. And they do a little deeper dive on certain topics. It's a little bit more open, free-form 2-hour session. So we have a lot of, and through YouTube videos, our YouTube channel, we're trying to get as much information out there so that people can, look at it, understand. More information is better than no information. And we're trying to get as much of that out there as possible and make it as easy as possible for people to get to. So I think we'll close out with one last question, and then you'll be off the hot seat. So given you've had quite a bit of experience with the SX solutions, what would be your advice to departments that are considering choosing Trimble Forensic Solutions?
The advice that I can give is look at the details. The devil's in the details. All the time we have sales guys that come in and want to wow us, give a 30-minute presentation of, wow, look at this, this is really cool. And it's really easy to fall into that, right? It looks really cool, let's do it. But then when you begin looking into it a little more, when you begin digging into the data sheets, when you begin exploring really looking into the instrument's capabilities and how the instrument operates, how the data is processed, those details are what come out in court. A lot of times the defense, they aren't looking at, wow, that's cool. They want to drill down into the details. And when you're being cross-examined, that's not always a real good spot to have those fine details come up at you. In fact, that's the worst time to have those fine details about your instrument and your software come up. So that's what I would say for people looking at instruments, whether it's Trimble, whether it's any other manufacturer. Look at the details. The details matter.
All right. Thanks a lot, Trooper Lutz, for your time and your answers and your insight and your interesting stories. Let's put it that way. There's never a not interesting story when talking with any of our customers. Brendan?
Yeah, thanks, guys. So for those of you that aren't aware, Devin and Chris did mention our workshop Wednesdays and our forensics YouTube channel. So you can get to our youtube.com/Trimble Forensics Media. Both Bryce Adams and Sear Shady have a ton of awesome tutorials on reveal, awesome tutorials on capture. So for those of you that are just getting started or want to learn something new, definitely check out our YouTube channel. Trooper Lutz also has some fantastic Tech Tip Tuesday videos that he does. We're through now on 2 seasons of those, so definitely check those out. I mean, it's just an absolute wealth of knowledge there for both new and existing customers already. You can also learn more at learn.trimble.com. On there, we have different courses that you can take online and at your leisure to really get to learn our software, learn capture, learn reveal, learn showcase. Every other Wednesday, we also put on a Wednesday workshops with, like Devin mentioned, Keegan and Bryce, as well as Fabian. So check out there. We're constantly doing updates on X7. We'll be doing SX series. You can always check out those Wednesday workshops for something new that you may not know. Or also check out our website. We're also always posting stuff on our website and on our Facebook. Website is forensics.trimble.com. And there you can see more details. You can look at our spec sheets for all of our instruments. You can also get into kind of deeper dive on some of our softwares and really get into the nitty gritty of what we can offer. So with that, I'd like to open up the floor to some questions.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, you can put them in the chat window there. I've had a couple come in. One was what field devices are compatible with using an SX12. Right now, there's the T10, it's a 10-inch tablet, or the TSC7. That one is a handheld field device with a physical keyboard and a 7-inch screen on it. Both of them take advantage of having the short range type of Wi-Fi communication technology so that you can stream video and view everything almost in near real time as it's happening on the device. But they also have the serial net radio, so when you do have to switch out to those long range applications, then you can use that radio communication and be using it as a robotic total station at that point. And the next question I see is, do the scans need to be registered? So there's two parts to this answer. So the first part is, if, as Brendan had mentioned earlier, if you follow the workflows that we have in Capture, that essentially directs you into scanning from known positions, your scans will come into Reveal already oriented correctly in relation to each other. So essentially they are registered together, which is quite unlike using a typical terrestrial 3D laser scanner where it's a free station scan. The scanner doesn't know where it is. It's really relying on each scan that it takes to register them together and get that geometry. But even as a whole, unless that scan is geo-referenced in some way, shape, or form, it's just floating off in space. With an SX12, you don't have that because you do have that relation to where you're at by scanning from known stations. So, that all being said, could you register the scans if for whatever reason you had a problem happen, right? Kind of messed up a setup, but still did the scan. Now your scans aren't oriented correctly together. Yes, you could take those scans, you could register them together in Trimble RealWorks Forensics. Then you could export that data to Reveal. So just know that all is not lost. The data is there. It's still point cloud data. It can be registered in that traditional sense of registering scans.
And if I could,
Yep.
I would like to add something to that. So typically when you're used to doing laser scanning and scan registration, you have to have overlap. You have to have commonality between stations. Where the SX is really shown for us is being able to make very aggressive moves of the instrument using survey data. And sometimes we have 0% overlap. There's no laser scan commonality between each setup. However, they're still referenced to one another with a survey grade level of accuracy through the survey move of the instrument, which then opens up possibilities where you don't have to worry about overlap. You don't have to worry about working your way over there. Just make the jump and you can conduct a laser scan and not worry about having to scan your way over.
Sorry, just bear with me a second. I lost my question window. So Brendan, if you're seeing them, or Sophie, can you help me out
Yeah,
here?
I've got a question here. So how do I gain access to those pictures? So there's a couple different ways to answer that. So first off, all the pictures that you take or the measurements that you take using control point or when you set up over a position, those pictures are automatically attached to the points that you take. So when you bring it into Reveal, when you hover over those points, that picture and that thumbnail will pop up and you can access those pictures that way. But also when you take a measurement, you have the ability to also add a picture of whatever you're trying to measure. So again, when you do bring that into Reveal, you're automatically going to see that picture associated with that point. And then from there, you can download the images. So it's not something that you're an additional file that you're having to bring over into Reveal. It's all connected within each piece of software.
Awesome. There's one question here. Can a point cloud data be exported as East57 file? All the information comes out of Capture in a .capture file. So, and that file is going to house your scan data, your point data, line data. If you're using other technologies such as GNSS receivers, because you can do integrated surveying or surveying mapping with the SX series, where you could put a GNSS receiver on top of your prism pole, and therefore you could take GNSS shots. You could, take shots to a prism. You can do scans, and it's all housed in that same data file. Now, after you put the file into Reveal, you definitely could, export your data in E57. That E57 is standard format in the industry, so yeah, we definitely support that.
That's Devin, are you seeing any more questions? I think that's all I have, or all that I see.
That is, yeah, that's about it right now. I think that's about it. I think we could
Awesome.
probably conclude here. I definitely want to thank Trooper Lutz once again for his time, and thank everyone for their time to attend this morning.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And again, if you have any questions or want to know more, feel free to email myself or Devin. Or if you want to get in contact with somebody to learn some more about actually going through and purchasing one of these SX12s, reach out to forensics_sales@trimble.com. Don't hesitate to ask us any questions. We're more than happy to help you guys at any time. With that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining, and again, thank you, Trooper Lutz, and everybody for their time.
Thank you
Everyone have
very
a
much.
fantastic day.
This was a really good webinar. Thank you very, very much.